don't need nuclear war. We don't need a pandemic to sweep the globe. We don't need any of that. You know what we need? We just need for the water to run out. We just need for the food supply to break down. That's it. That's it. We got 7.5 billion people on the planet. Yeah, moving. Oh, great. That's awesome. Thanks, Dave. Moving toward 8 billion at pace. We're getting an aging population, right? What that means is that once these hardships start hitting us, older people, because they're naturally more frail, not all of them, but most of them, they're less likely to survive any hardships that come our way. It's just the nature of the beast, right? So we've got an aging population. We've got catastrophes coming. We've got our infrastructure no longer being able to cope. So our electricity grids, our transportation systems, even our communication systems. There was there was an electromagnetic storm, if you will, that came. This was, correct. That's exactly right. But it was so strong that it disrupted all. Back in that day, it didn't matter because there wasn't that much electricity and not much radio traffic. None of that it wasn't very disruptive, but it was disruptive enough to be noticed. But these days, when we are so dependent upon electromagnetism, electricity, and so forth in our communications, daily lives, and all kinds of things, right? Because we're not a civilization that is addicted to hydrocarbons. That's incorrect. We are addicted to electricity. No, it is. It's true.
Oh, I completely agree.
Hydrocarbons are just used to produce electricity or power of some sort, right? But we're now moving away from hydrocarbons into pure electricity, if you will, or more or less pure electricity. With Tesla cars and batteries and all that, right? So we are addicted to electricity. Once this electricity stops, once something happens, EMPs, anything, solar storms to disrupt that, and the switch is turned off, we are screwed.
It clearly, by far, it is the most devastating or feared societal breakdown cause. Of all
100%.
of them, it's the one that's feared the most because it's so easy to occur.
It is.
The kill shots, all we need from the sun is CME. We get, an electromagnetic storm, or there's maybe some kind of EMP. Mekki, even the pole shift is theorized to be sufficient enough to kill all of the current civilization, because not the people, but our tech.
Yeah, and even if that weren't to happen, let's say best case scenario, right? We don't get an EMP, we don't get a major solar event, none of that. And the pole is not shifting. I'm talking about the magnetic pole. Dave was talking about the magnetic pole. That's what we're talking about here, right? The shift of those, the physical pole. I mean, who cares? But the point is, let's say that doesn't happen, okay? But the temperatures start rising. And weather events are becoming more and more extreme, and to the point where, of course, there's not much we can do. It disrupts travel, disrupts all kinds of transportation, disrupts the food supply, and now, because the load on our grids is so high, because of heating requirements, because of cooling requirements, and this is really going to hurt Europe, by the way, because they're just not geared toward air conditioning at all, right? So once people start buying these air conditioning units for their homes and putting them in, that grid is going to collapse. All those grids. In Australia, our grid is not going to cope. Okay, and you're right, Dave. Good point. Well, what do you think? When do people stop going to work? I mean, at what point will it become impossible to go to work?
When will people? When you say impossible, Mekki, when you were away, I did an entire 2 hours on this point, and I think it was 1 hour. 1 hour on the point of, what does it take for societal breakdown? And on that question, that's the question. What does it actually take for people to stop going to work? Because it may be that travel is impossible, or it may be that at some point it's either too dangerous, or your preference is to look after your loved ones rather than go to work. And that same question is valid for whatever you do. It's just a different amount of time. So if you're selling tech at a retail store, that might be sooner than if you feel it's your responsibility to maintain the electrical grid. You might want to go to work regardless, like Superman going to work and trying to keep the grid going. But our kryptonite is our electrical grid going down.
It is 100%, and there's no backup. I mean, we in Australia we saw what happened in South Australia. Remember, Dave?
That's right.
In South Australia, the electrical system just couldn't cope. It shut down, and a million people, that's the entire population of South Australia, and Australia here, it's a state, was without electricity for a few days. A few days there was no electricity. This is the 21st century we're talking about here, right? And that was brought about apparently by some storm damage.
There was some storm damage during a maintenance cycle where the links had lost their redundancy.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
But Mackie, you said 20th century. That's really funny. 21st? Well, I live on the Central Coast, and I don't think they've even heard of the 21st century because we were down for 7 days with no power.
That's nuts. In this day and age, if you think about it, that's nuts. In a first world nation, I think we still call ourselves that. And it is really quite. It's not. Well, see, in India there are various reasons why the grid isn't working, right? And I might have explained this in the past. And a large part of it is electricity theft. That's a big problem in India, where people just hook up illegally to the grid and overload it that way, which leads to brownouts, blackouts, things like that on a regular basis. But the sheer heat, and this is, countries that are hot already are going to get even hotter. While people are probably better equipped in those countries to deal with the increasing, heat. Like I said, other areas in the world, other geographies, other countries are simply not geared that way at all. They have no chance. They have no hope. They have all they have is a prayer and maybe a cellar. If you live in Europe, make sure that you've got a cellar, because the cellar stays relatively cool. The earth, provides a natural cooling to you, absorbing a lot of the ambient heat that is outside. That's why I guess a lot of houses in Europe are built with cellars, both for winter and for summer uses. But if you don't have that, if you don't have air conditioning, even if you have air conditioning, once it's overloading the grid, it's gone. If you're an elderly person that's stuck in a hot flat, maybe you're overcome by the heat, you fall down. Maybe you hit your head, maybe you don't. But the point is, if you are weak, then this could be a catastrophic event for you. It is usually the very young and the very old that suffer the most. But with this kind of heat and with these kinds of catastrophic outages, it could be anything. And then there are knock-on effects. There's spoilage of food, right? Food is going to spoil. There's no more pumping. If your electricity goes down, how are you going to pump the water? How are you going to do that? There's no light. There's nothing. Their communications goes right down with it. We're going back to carrier pigeons at that point. So no, people don't really think things through. Dave, is what I experience in my life. They have a lot of ideas, and I see this everywhere. Every facet of my life is beset by people that do not think things through.
Yes.
Right? Work, home to some extent. No, actually, home no. The home is perfect. But certainly out in the world when I'm driving or at work when I'm working with people don't think things through. It's maybe it's a feature now. It's a feature. We don't have to think. That's just stupid. We just have activity. Let's be active and do something. Activity has replaced planning, right? Because activity that's a good thing, right? Activity. We all need activity. We all run around like mad. Look at us running around like mad. But yeah. So look, it is as bad as we say it is. And if you don't believe us, look at the Bahamas, right? Thousands of people potentially lost their life there recently in the storms.
There's still 2,500 people who are registered as missing.
Correct. I don't think. Look,
I don't think so.
I don't think it's going to be a happy ending. I don't think they're all huddled up on a mountaintop somewhere.
No. So Mecki, the word on the ground is the smell of death is everywhere.
Look, after any major flooding event of this nature, this is no. As the waters recede and the natural decay sets in, it's not good.
And cholera and hep, and what's the other one? There's another one that's usually found. Typhoid. Absolutely, they're prevalent in a washout. So good luck.
Yeah.
Look,
that's.
Go ahead.
Go.
No, I was just going to say if anyone has gone through that, and I know that a lot of places throughout the US have had enormous flooding events, but when your town is gone, whether it's a tsunami or a hurricane or a typhoon or whatever it took to take it out, it's really a bad experience. You need to remove yourself from that, because you've just being there is going to diminish your life. So get out of there straight away.
Well, look, that's a fact, and the problem here is even bigger than so. Let's say these, and this we've seen this, Dave. Hurricane Katrina. I mean, these events are happening here and there, and if they're isolated, we can deal with it more or less well, right? I mean, Katrina was probably dealt with poorly, but it was dealt with eventually. But we can deal with it. If there's 1 or 2, if there's 8 or 10, we can deal with it. If there's scores or even hundreds of events like this every year, we're going to stop being able to deal with it, because when you pick up the phone one day, there's no help coming. You can call 911 all you like, or if you know the real number is 912, you can call that, right? But the simple matter is that that there won't be any help forthcoming, because our resources will be stretched too thin, and those emergency services will also be affected by the very same outages and I guess breakdowns of supply chain as everybody else. And you will be able to, hopefully you'll be able to rely on yourself and your friends and neighbors and family and whatever to get through it, because that's what you will have to do. You have to get through it.
Mickey, during the New Orleans disaster, they had emergency centers below floodline. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So they were knocked out like everybody else, and couldn't do anything to attend, and couldn't hand out blankets and do rescues. And they, the first thing, if you're on a plane and they're doing the safety briefing, you should take note and use this in your life. The first person to save is yourself, and then you can save others.
Yeah.
Right.
And people ask, no, but you're right though. And this is the same thing in the plane, like you said. You got to save yourself first, then you can help others. If you don't help yourself first, then you're good to anyone.
That's right.
There's no point. I mean, everybody's going to die, right? But the really interesting thing is this. So the question is being asked always. Well, why do you waste your time talking about the past then, Mickey, on your show or in general? Who cares? Like, let's focus on the now. You've got a platform here. You talk about the current issues. Well, yes, of course, but maybe not exactly this, but things like this have happened. What happened? And we know they were catastrophic because we have no memory of these cultures. Mm-hmm. We don't know. We don't know who built Göbekli Tepe. We don't know. We have no idea. We don't know, in fact, really, in my opinion, who built the megalithic structures all over the world. Okay? Again, in light of today's show. Someone built them. They're there. You can't argue with it. Yeah, Göbekli. That's what I said. Göbekli.
You're right. You're right, Mickey. But let's focus on that point about that's been raised to us, not to talk about the past. With the platform, we should be talking about just the future and the now, right? Which are actually described as the same thing. They are the same thing. Well, that's a good point. I like that you've brought it up, and I like that this interactive nature of the show where people can talk to us. And Mickey and I, we have friends that talk to us about topics, and I know I get a couple of calls a week from one of the fans of the show, and a good friend of mine, and we talk about all sorts of things. Like it's a crazy kind of conversation that goes in any direction it needs to go, and hopefully we loop back and conclude some of those ideas. The thing is, you need a measure, and unfortunately for us, the measure isn't something that many people can comprehend well. So we need to be able to reference the past to be able to show you and give you a measure of what these things are. So one of those things, Mickey, that we try really hard not to do, and I'll pass it to you, and that is put everything in a human scale. Because doing that is the first mistake, because we don't know. You know those massive stairs, Mickey, in like near Machu Picchu? They're massive stairs. Yeah. Who built those? How big must you have been? in
People with really
Egypt,
long legs.
yeah, really, really long, like 8 meter long legs. So in Egypt, there are all of the building openings and all the statues are so massive that it sort of begs the question: how tall these people that were building this for themselves? Like Mackie,
Yeah.
if you look at another example, and this is bringing it closer to now. I used to live in terrace houses in the inner city, and the kitchens were really small, and the doors were small, and the staircases were small for small people. They were smaller 200 years ago, on average. However, now we're maybe taller. So, on the human scale, which scale? I ask. Straight away. Which one? Which one are you talking about? What is it? The now? Is it, the fact that you look at how tall of the basketball players need to be and how many of them there are now to choose from when creating a team. I remember at my school we had like 2 guys that were tall and the rest weren't. Now there's a lot more. It's like hydroponic people. We're getting the right food at the right time and being able to grow to the right height. Supporting the hypothesis there, Mackie. I'm throwing it back to you.
No, but you're right. And you're right in bringing it up. What is the human scale we're applying here? At what point do we think the human scale should be taken as the average? Right? What is the neutral stance here? And the answer is there isn't one. We don't know. This is a moving target. I was in Orlando a few years ago at a conference in a hotel, and at the same time, there must have been like a volleyball tournament thing going on for high schools, I guess, in America, and for girls. There was a girls' volleyball, must have been, because there were all these volleyball girl teams in the hotel, and they were like teenagers, right? Probably, I don't know, 15, 16, whatever they were, but they were all towering over me. I'm a 6-foot guy. I'm not a small guy.
He is.
Right?
Mickey's really
But
tall.
I had to look up. And this is like an average thing. I mean, these girls were all like a head and more taller than me. In fact, much more than a head taller than me. And I'm looking up at them. I feel like a dwarf, walking amongst these teenage girls. and so the human scale is a moving feast. The human scale is not an absolute, okay? There aren't any real absolutes when it comes to the human experience. We have got some things that are absolute in the universe, but even those seem to be breaking down somewhat when put under extreme conditions, like gravity or the speed of light or other things, right? So we'd like to think of them as constants or absolute, but they're not. Right? They are not. Given the right circumstances, they can vary. Maybe not a lot, but they can vary. And looking at us, and this is really, really important again, because it frames our role, our place within this. We are important, of course. We're self-aware, we're conscious, more or less. We're half smart. That's good. But we are not the measure of all things. We are not the measure of all things. We are, virtually insignificant. If you look at the planet Earth from space, what happens on the surface of it is actually completely irrelevant. If you're flying by our solar system, right, and you look at the Earth, you go, well, there's a planet. Who cares? Moving right along. So all the things we've done here, all these massive constructions and tall buildings, and look at us doing, nuclear weapons and whatnot, flying to the moon. Really fairly small scale stuff. There are suns out there which are 1,000,000 times larger, 1,000,000 times larger than our sun. Yeah? Our sun is gigantic compared to us. Okay? We are little tiny creatures on the surface of the planet compared to the sun.
Equivalent to less than amoeba, maybe bacteria.
Yeah, in relation to our scales, right. Again, correct. Yeah, so we need to take a step back here and understand that. Yes, we are important. I think we're critically important for the existence of this universe. But forget scale here for a second. Everything that we like, age, what it takes to do things, how tall we believe, and this is really killing me. It's killing me. I'll tell you why. Because everything is so dogmatic and so boxed in. You can't have these divergent ideas. You're not allowed to voice an opinion which is outside the accepted box. Chomsky said Noam Chomsky, a linguist, a great, interesting thinker. He said, within our, I'm paraphrasing, but within our system of things here, within our civilization, within our society, we can talk about anything we like as long as we stay within the constraints of the box we've been put in. Because if you're in the box, then anything is allowed. If you go outside the box, that's the problem, right? Independent thought alarm. And it is a shame that we do that. It's a shame that we represent theories as facts. It's a shame that we stifle independent and original thought because it doesn't fit in with the dogma and the careers we have built for ourselves.
Well, you know, we've got the ever-shrinking box.
The ever-shrinking
right
box.
now. The social media ever-shrinking box.
It is.
Our country, I mean, the government, I shouldn't say the country, because you might suppose that it's the people's vote. No. The government of our country in Australia decided that Milo was unfit for the population's consumption. Equally, David Icke.
Uh-huh.
Now, Mackie, that box shrank so much they don't fit in it anymore.
Yeah, I know, right?
Right?
I know.
So
yeah.
This point, the point is that as long as you're talking about the things they want to hear, who has their finger on the button, the Simpsons gag, what button? That it's okay. You're okay. You're okay to do this. This social, the point system, the social credit, the 365 view of you from your peers, how many likes, the kind of I keep getting these things in my Facebook that say, this group, you've now earned a badge from being a top contributor to this group. Did I? Maybe, Mackie, that's a good thing, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm supposing they're training me. Social media is training me to talk nice about these topics. And if I keep doing that, I'll keep earning things. It's that same endorphin that the person playing a slot machine would get by having a single payout with a single coin, despite how much I've put into it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That social credit is already here. It's just, I think, in a slightly different form.
No, I agree. Absolutely. What we will see is we'll see an evolution, right, of these things as we move forward as well.
I think they're trying it in different countries in different ways to see how it affects people.
Yeah,
I'm sure the social experiment is well underway. I'm just covering up the microphone on my on my phone so it can't hear me say this. But maybe we're being controlled. And there's no maybe about it, right?
There's no maybe about it. You're absolutely right. But we are dealing with the fallout. We're dealing with the consequences of our actions more and more every day. Be they in the social media field, be they in the way that people interact, be they having the ability to speak outside the box. And recently we had some homes raided here in Australia by the police in pursuit of, I guess, what was the story that was deemed a national security story. So that was, I think the jury is still out of that one. We're dealing with the climate survivors, climate change battlers, if you will. Mm-hmm. People that have seen their livelihoods disappear, they see their homes disappear. These islands, these are disappearing. The climate is changing, and where once there were crops aplenty, there are now no longer any crops because it's too dry. And they've been planting for hundreds of years, and now they can no longer do that because there's not enough water. Yes, these things happen all the time, here and there, but they've never really happened all over the place, all at the same time. That is the difference.
Well, see, this is the
difference
thing.
is that it's happening now all over the world.
You can disagree openly in publicly, that there is any problem with the climate if you're a government. You can do that as much as you like with a head in the sand, but if everything is showing a positive, that it's in a significant amount of change, more so than the experts have ever predicted, and that it's now like a runaway train, just using your train left the station. It's the train is accelerating faster and faster and faster towards this point. Whether we don't know whether it's a tunnel or it's just a flat wall that we're going to crash into and all perish from it, right? But it's getting worse, and there is evidence everywhere, and it still astonishes me today that there could be anyone alive that let's say, who are intelligent enough to understand what the science means, who could argue it any other way. That's the problem. So, and if wherever you are, and if it's getting colder where you are, great. That's lucky you. It'll last longer, your predicament. And I just, if you argue that it isn't getting hotter, then come to Australia and then you tell me. Because the proof is all here, and because there's a funny thing that you can play. There's a game, Sandbox. It's the Solar System Sandbox, the Universe Sandbox, whatever it's called. And Australia seems to go unscathed. Doesn't matter what happens on the planet. When you play with all the things to ruin the planet, Australia seems to get out of it pretty much unscathed. Not so in reality, though.
I mean, we're protected here by a number of things. The one thing that protects are the ocean currents that are getting all the bad stuff away from us. That's good. So we're not affected at all by Fukushima, for example. That's all hitting the west coast of the United States for the most part. We're protected in the north as well. We're protected in the south and in the east and west, and certainly in the south, due to the Arctic Sea. So there's a lot of ocean currents not coming our way with bad stuff. Same goes with wind currents, right? Even if there were major fallout in the northern hemisphere, because the northern and the southern hemispheres don't really exchange a lot of, how can I put this best, wind,
as it were. Or air.
Yeah. It's not completely cut off, of course, but there's a lot less bleed through than one might think. It's not one homogeneous system, and the currents. Currently, the currents at least are protecting us here somewhat. What they do not protect us from, of course, is the overall heating of the planet, because that's just the whole planet is heating up, and it's one gigantic heat sink, if you want to think of it that way, right? The heat is dispersing equally everywhere. There's nothing really stopping it too much, and this is really the worry, right? So why look at the past? Because it happened. It has happened. We have seen civilizations collapse. Massive civilizations which today we could not begin to emulate. We can't build like they did.
No.
We can't. We cannot. We can do other things, and we're really good at it, and that's awesome. Our civilization is very different, right? But by the same token, we're a lot more vulnerable. Our supply chains are vulnerable. We've got cities, we've got mega cities of tens of millions of people. Mm-hmm. If you've got a mega, so these are not people working the land, Dave, right? These are not farmers that can, fend for themselves. It's not like we're talking like tens of millions of people that have a homestead and grow rice and have a cow. We're talking about people that living in apartment blocks, like in Hong Kong, for example, or even, Calcutta or New York, right? Which are just living there, and they're getting all of the stuff they need to live from the outside.
That's right. That's right.
There's not it's not entirely true in some community gardens, but there's no significant food production happening in Hong Kong. There's no significant food production happening in New York.
The supply chains are definitely from an external source.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Singapore gets most of its food from the outside. It's an island nation with millions of people, right? You interrupt that, you stop it, you're done. That's it.
Do you know
There's nothing.
what I was thinking of, Mickey, that you'll like this one, and it's that those people, those nations who are closer to their farming, or have a high percentage of their population tending farms, are more likely to survive.
Yes.
Because think about it. I think we mentioned this way back, like maybe within the first 10 shows that we did, and we're at 392, and that is right. That farming, it only takes 2 generations to forget actually how to farm. See, what to farm when is how to farm.
Yeah.
We don't know, and I know I've got a book. I bought a book on every single plant type on the planet and what you can eat, what you can't eat, when to plant it. If you find a seed, this is what it looks like. I've got a book that does that. So if we lose electricity, at least I can start doing something.
Yeah.
But it's too late, because the length of time it takes to get some crops up, I might have gone down the wrong path.
Yeah. Same. Look, we have lost the actual true surviving skills to actually survive just on our own wits. I mean, as hunter-gatherer, right? How do you do it? The answer is, well, we couldn't. Most of us couldn't really do it. And you're right, Dave, in saying that the farming communities would have a much better chance. And that's why I'm always very happy to hear about local produce or seasonal produce, things like that. A lot of the top chefs in the world are going back to seasonal produce. They're focusing on the local things that are grown locally, that are raised locally, within the season that they're raised in, and that's what they cook in their restaurants, right? That's what they tell people as food, and that's really the most sustainable way of existence, right? Everything else, I mean, right now, so we can get plums and nectarines and peaches all year round in Australia. You can all year round. Right now, it just so happens that grapes and peaches and plums are coming from the United States. You stop that, like the global food chain. In fact, the longer the distance, the less likely it is, to get anywhere. You stop that. There's no more peaches in winter. There's no more grapes in winter. None of that. And you can only get it when the seasonal fruit or whatever it might be grows in that particular country. So all of that is going to go away, right? So I like to focus and buy only the things that are growing in that particular season. And in Australia, we're lucky. It's pretty, it's pretty good climate to grow a whole bunch of things. Maybe there's some water shortages, but still, we're pretty lucky compared to other places. And we have got the whole range of climate, right from the top end, which is tropical, down to I guess Melbourne and even Tasmania, which is more Northern European in its climate affiliation, the temperature and precipitation and things like that. But overall, though, I'm telling you, unless you become self-sufficient to some extent, and that's what I love about some of the communities, the ethnic communities they're called in Australia, like Asians, Indians, some Mediterranean, Italians. Yeah, they grow some of their foodstuffs in their garden. I mean, mango trees or a star fruit or whatever it might be, right? So tomatoes, yeah, all that stuff, right? And why not? I think that's great. I mean, I myself have mostly herbs, but I'm looking now to raise a lemon tree, other things as well, because it just makes sense. If you can, then why not? And then the funny thing is this: we all have gardens, Dave. You go to the suburbs, there's always a lawn. Mm-hmm. Why is there a lawn? What a waste of space! Mm-hmm. What I see more and more now is I see community gardens or little gardens springing up, and they actually grow things in these green patches in front of the house. Actually, people start, well, why not grow something? What's the grass going to do for you?
I know right? What it is. It's people's want to control nature, to show that they've got it under control.
Yeah,
that's the only thing it's there for.
It makes no sense. It's much more sensible to grow berry bushes. Imagine, and this is I saw this recently. I can't remember where I saw it, but there was this and I know we're almost at the top of the hour, but there was this question posed: what if we had fruit trees? So forget all ornamentary plants and all kinds of stuff. Forget all that. Just throw it out and plant fruit trees and berry bushes and vegetable patches for the homeless people, or for people just in general to go and
That's
get.
Right.
Just so instead of having the council workers mow the lawns and all that, they tend to the gardens, which I believe is probably a much more rewarding kind of pastime as well. And then let the council workers take home as much of that produce as you want to take it. Knock yourself out,
Oh,
and if you're like
as General Electric, Mackie, said to Tesla, where's the money in that?
Yeah, where's the money there?
Giving
and
out
that,
free
friend,
anythings.
And that, my friend, is as the Bard will tell us, where the rub is. We have gone entirely in the wrong direction from where we should have been to the profit motive. We have gone for profit. We don't understand any longer what it means to have a successful society. We have forgotten what it means to be successful as people. We have. And this is really funny. In every aspect of life, I ask now, when do we know we're done with a project, with anything? When do we know we've been successful? And most people just look at me. Well, what do you mean? No, we just activity. Again, to my earlier point, no, it's just all activity now. Activity. We need to have some focused undertakings that give us a successful outcome, that give us something that we can build on. If we all planted an apple tree, a pear tree, banana plant, I don't care, anything in your backyard, you will feel a lot better. And all of a sudden, a lemon tree. When I was a child or teenager, we had a lemon tree, a big lemon tree in our backyard. We never bought lemons. Never. Because we had oodles of lemons, right? My friend from work, he's moving up north, and he's moving onto a piece of land, and it's like macadamia trees. Like he's got, scores and scores of macadamia trees. Is he ever going to buy a macadamia nut in his life? Never.
No.
He might be able to sell some. So why not do this? Become a smallholder. The river cottage type of thing that the BBC had. Now it's a river cottage in Australia. Let's do that. Let's plant. Forget the ornamental plants. Get some actual productive food plants in your garden.
You'll need someone to start your car in a minute, Mackie.
I know, right? What? Dave, can you come over and start my car? Come on, let's do it.
Sure. The thing that I liked to do when I watched that show was open up my pantry and see what I'm going to miss. To mentally stock take the things that I'll never be able to grow, make, or reproduce in any way. Just think about that. I don't have a coffee tree, so coffee is going to go. Maybe, I can trade wheatgrass for someone who has, pumpkin and then trade that to, and trade up until I get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, maybe.
Right?
Maybe.
Cornflakes. It's just rolled and baked corn. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You can make that in your own house.
Mm.
It's really not that difficult. But this is what we're going to miss. I'm going to miss Vegemite because that's an awful process to make it taste right. Otherwise, you end up with Marmite. And then I'm going to quit, right? I quit trying to search for it if I end up with that. Look, the music is going to be starting any second. I just want to remind everyone to don't forget to donate. Take the time to do that. It's very important. Let's listen to Funded Radio. And also, after you've donated, then jump in the chat room and chat to us while we're on air.
Please, that'd be awesome.
Because that's highly important. And look, the message that we give you every week, the message in every one of our conversations is to ensure you're prepared, yourself and your family and loved ones are prepared for anything that might happen. And we also throw in some good education in the way to do that. It's very important. There's the music. We'll see you after the short break. Take care. Welcome back to Shiny Side Out. The end of break caught me off guard. We're halfway through show number 392. And this is Dave and Maggie's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. On the number one listener-supported talk radio on the net. So push the donate button or subscribe to the archives for only $5 a month. Really, I mean, that's so reasonable. And that's why I do it. I've got a conversion rate from Australian dollars to US dollars. And I think it's $5 US. So, pardon me. It's clearing my mouth. Okay, so welcome aboard. If you're a new listener, we're glad you're with us. And for all of those others who have followed, subscribed, or otherwise, we hope to allow your journey to be an easy one. I think the easy part is the toughest part. Believe it or not. I mean, it sounds complicated, but it's really not that terrible. And then we're halfway through show number 392. We're talking about megalithic builders. Hoping Meki comes back in a minute. I've got 10 images here. Well, we have 10 images, which I'll start walking us through. And start a slide deck. And hopefully it's going to behave itself and take us through each one of these one by one. But I'm not confident that I'm going to be able to stop the slide deck at the end of each one. So bear with me on the transition and the interval.
It's really important for everybody to see these pictures, because we could talk about this all day long, right? It's meaningless unless you can actually see the stoneworks, the walls, the buildings, and the different eras of construction. It's because it's like night and day. And one of my favorite examples, it's not here, but I'm sure Dave has got it as part of a different slideshow, is the Jupiter Temple. And again, you can see three
in the general slide deck, which will be after this anyway.
Perfect. And you can see three distinct eras of constructions. And here, there's one here, at the
Machu Picchu.
Yeah, Machu Picchu. There's a left. There's a picture of a wall that's on the left, which is perfect. It's really very neat construction. On the right is an Inca wall, which is hodgepodge and not very sophisticated at all, right? It looks like it's going to fall down any moment. But it's like night and day. It's like looking at a painting by a master and the painting of a 2-year-old, right, with crayons. That's really the level of difference that you can see. Not putting down a 2-year-old's crayon at all here, but that's the level of sophistication we're talking about.
And also in some of the images, you'll see 3 levels, not just 2, 3 levels.
Yes,
where
correct.
The third one is even worse. So you've got these massive megalithic stone structures. Then you've got ones that look sort of like they were trying to do it, but didn't have the size stones and all the technology, and did a reasonable job of making a wall. But then thirdly, you've just got, like, it's filled in, like you just had any rocks, just the debris left over. But they're different eras. So not to forget that when you're looking at them.
Yeah, and there's another picture that will be there. It's the Cusco site. Sorry, it's a site that is north of Cusco, and it's the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, and it's an andesite wall. It's made of interlocking blocks, where the largest stones weigh as much as 125 tons. But the key thing here is, and this is important, that each foundational stone goes about 12 feet underground, which, for all intents and purposes, makes the wall earthquake-proof. Right? And if you look at it again, you can see it just as a gateway or a doorway, which is the megalithic construction. And on top of that, you've got the rough Inca stone and clay, whereas the megalithic stones have no mortar. It's mortarless. These stones are fitted together perfectly without mortar. And again, the next picture again is as well. You've got the megalithic stones underneath as the first layer of construction. On top of that, you've got the Inca stones again, built with mortar and much smaller stones and much less impressive as that were. So, as we have seen, in almost every part of the world, we see the oldest stones being the foundation, right? And clearly that's what people use. I mean, if you've got a great foundation, why not use it? I mean, we are nothing if not practical as a species. So let's reuse it, and we have, and there we are. Let's just build on this. Clearly, it's a foundational wall that has stood here for a while. Let's just build on top of it. We can't build like it, but we can make use of it in our construction. Okay, we're not saying we build it, but we will build using it. And this is the most amazing one here is This is the Peru's largest archaeological site. And it's Ollantaytambo, Tambo, and there's these massive stone blocks, right? And you can see in between is Inca blocks that fill it in.
Mm-hmm.
But the massive stone blocks themselves, it's I mean, it looks interesting. It's not a bad feature as far as I guess architecture goes. It makes it look interesting, but you can see there is no relationship between the two styles of building at all.
None.
It's not even the same type of stone.
That's
right?
The truth too. And when you look at the larger, when the stones become extremely large, it does appear as though they might have been like a soft. So megalithic building has at some point in these walls and these structures appear as though, to our eyes, that they might have been able to have the stone in a manner which isn't stone anymore.
Yeah.
To be able to make it like a putty.
Correct.
And then it's solidified.
There's actually a competing theory, and I quickly wanted to mention this. This is a theory that was put forward a long time ago. I want to say 70s here, and it was put forward by I can't remember the gentleman, but there's certainly in many articles. There's a very interesting article. It's called "Ancient Megalithic Construction Secrets," and what they propose here is that not natural stone was used. Right, but in the 70s, here we go. It was in fact the 70s, in 1969. Yeah, but it was rather a concrete or stone that was amalgamated. Now that's not a bad idea, of course, and that's how the Romans built exactly. But we do know that natural stone was used. How do we know this? Well, for the most part, it's because the quarries are still there, and they go once again. I go back to Tepe, to Baalbek. In Baalbek. Yes, we have a few stones that actually made it to the platform of the Jupiter temple, but there are, I think, 4 or 5 stones which are still in the quarry, which were never moved. Mm-hmm. So these are not stones that were form poured. They weren't poured there. They were carved out of the rock. It's the same with the temple at Giza, in Heliopolis, but certainly the temple of the Sphinx. These are all carved out of stone. The Sphinx itself is carved out of bedrock, right? One of the largest carvings ever. Petra, again, another one that is carved out of the rock. It wasn't poured there like concrete was. So I'm not saying that it didn't happen, that it didn't, it wasn't used. Of course it was. We know the Romans did. But we also know for a fact that some of these stones are just that, natural stones. They were worked stones. And the most impressive ones of those, if there should have been any ones that should have been concrete or poured, are the ones at Baalbek, right? But those we know for a fact are quarried stone. There's no argument. No one would dispute that.
That's right.
At any given time, right? But Dave is right. It seems as though the builders, the megalithic builders, especially in the Americas, were able, especially South America, were able to somehow turn the stone into putty and fit together in that way. Otherwise, what they would have needed was extremely accurate computer modeling and even more accurate cutting of the stones to fit with the preconceived computer model, because obviously they built the way they did, both for aesthetic reasons, because it is actually quite pleasing to see these megalithic structures, right? It's actually nice. It is like a very complex puzzle in some instances. In other instances, very neat, but certainly in other instances, it's like a complex puzzle. And secondly, to construct like this would have certainly been an advantage in an earthquake area because of the interlocking stones.
The nature of the stones and the way they fit together is more susceptible. Less susceptible to earthquake and more flexible, since it doesn't contain any mortar.
Yes, that is correct. The energy of the earthquake is more easily dispersed along this particular construction, right? So that's what I see, and you can see these stones. And stone, we know stone weathers and gets old, but I look at this, and clearly at some point this was fairly polished stone, fairly neat as well, but it's weathered a lot. in the intervening years, right? So a lot of time must have passed. And in fact, now we know that the megalithic builders go back as far as Göbekli Tepe, which we now put at about 12,000 years ago, 12,000 years from the present, and we have no contemporary civilization. We have nothing. We have exactly nothing. We don't know who built it or why, and why they buried it. None of it. We just don't know. And my point stands yet again that it was 12 to 14. Yeah, my point stands still that we can't explain it, and we only found it by dumb luck, right? How many more things are buried out there? How many more things have we not found? How many things we simply cannot recognize, either because of the scale, or the location, or the weathering of it, right? There's a mountain in here in Sydney, in Yango National Park. I think it's called Mount Yango, actually.
It is Mount Yango.
Which a friend of the show's, Paul Hovey, took a picture of, and then with Photoshop he just superimposed one part of or one side of the pyramid onto the next. It's perfect. They're perfectly superimposable on each other, so it means it's completely symmetrical. This particular mountain is completely symmetrical. How often do you find that in nature? Not only that, it sticks out like the proverbial thumb out of the undergrowth. Like there's no other mountain near it. It's just incongruous, right?
And
we've seen it.
It looks like an Aztec temple.
Yeah, it does. Now, what you would have to dig and have a massive archaeological undertaking, because it's a fairly sizable mountain, and you probably wouldn't get it because it's an Aboriginal sacred site. But my point is that we may not recognize a lot of these things. I think the largest construction in the solar system that I think is a construction, an artificial construction, we can't recognize, or we couldn't conceive of being a construction, is the moon. I believe the moon is an artificial construct. But that's just my opinion, right? Oh, actually, it's not entirely true. There's a whole bunch of other people who believe that as well. I have no proof positive. I only have some proof points that are, not completely conclusive. But the moon mystery is one of the largest mysteries, and again, it feeds right into the megalithic building here as well. I do want to share something from you from Civilization 1. It's the book that we discussed by Christopher Knight and Alan Butler. And Civilization 1 is these are the researchers that we mentioned last week about that looked at the megalithic yard and followed Tom's research as well. So I want to share a couple of their conclusions in the final chapter about the sun, moon, and the megalithic measure. Conclusions. It is suggested that humans would not exist if it were not for the size and mass of the moon. The moon has many strange properties, including the fact that its risings and settings completely mirror those of the sun during the year. 2. We, this is the authors here, looked at the circumference of the moon and found that it conforms to the megalithic geometry with precisely 100 megalithic yards to lunar second of arc. Then we found that the sun also conforms to megalithic geometry with 40,000 megalithic yards to a second of arc. No other bodies of the solar system conform to these principles. When we looked at the movement of the moon, we found that the Earth experiences 27.3217 days for every one of the moon's days, which is the same as one lunar orbit of the Earth. While the number 27.3217 sounds entirely arbitrary, a quick calculation showed that the moon makes 366 orbits in just 10,000 Earth days. A megalithic second of arc and a second of time were the same thing, and are equal to 366 megalithic yards at the equator. This makes our modern, non-integrated system look pathetically unsophisticated. So these are just some of the conclusions. Sorry, that's not part of the show notes. That are in Civilization 1. A really good book if you have the time to read it. I highly recommend it. Please do so. There's a lot more to it. And and it really is directly linked yet again to the book Who Built the Moon, and I don't think we can look at one mystery and forget about the other, because it's all linked. So we have a global megalithic culture, or megalithic building culture, but who's to say, Dave, that they weren't spacefaring? Who is to say that the moon was not built by someone at some point? Okay, I know this is completely off the reservation. Pardon the pun here, and it's completely tinfoil hat. But I believe that one mystery goes hand in hand with the other, and we just simply cannot conceive of it as having been built because it's so big, right? We look at it and go, wow, how would you do that?
Human
and
scale
then
again.
exactly human scale again. We are speculating in science fiction about type 2 civilizations that build Dyson spheres. Yeah. So now a Dyson sphere is much bigger than that, much bigger than a moon. In fact, they would take the entire all the bodies in the solar system, they would break them down into their to create the Dyson sphere, right? So the entire solar system would become the building blocks of a Dyson sphere if ever we get to that point. So we need to adjust our scales a little bit, and I understand it's hard because we've only reached a certain level of development, a certain level of achievement, but we cannot make the mistake of thinking that we are the pinnacle, because I don't think we are. And in fact, I'm pretty sure at this point, Dave, we can say with 95% certainty, right, that we're not.
Say it. That's right.
Safely say it. Now, which brings us full circle, my friend. Now, thank you very much for putting the slideshow up. That's brilliant, and people really have to see it. You have to see the Inca construction, the bricks and mortar on top or next to or filling in the gaps in the megalithic constructions. You really have to see it. You can talk about it all day, but unless you see it, it is meaningless. Once you see it, you go, oh wow, yeah, clearly this is not the same thing.
Yeah, so
clearly
you have the pre-Inca, Inca, and Spanish.
Correct. Bingo. And it's. I mean, you got to be blind not to see it. I mean, I don't know. You have to be willfully ignorant, right?
Oh, I like that. That's better. That's my favorite one so far.
Right. So now this brings us full circle, though, and don't forget we are in Australia, the non-existent continent, according to some flat earthers. We don't exist. But there's actually a global, or there's a theory, I should say, about a global Aboriginal Australian culture. And the proof may very well have been, or still is, at Göbekli Tepe. This was written by Bruce Fenton in 2017. It was originally published in New Dawn magazine in July 2017, which is also an Australian publication. Our show notes contain all disclaimers and copyright information, so we are. I was going to read it quickly out here. So, okay, copyright New Dawn magazine, permission granted to freely distribute this article for non-commercial purposes, if unedited copy in full, which we have, including this notice, which we have. Copyright New Dawn magazine, permission to resend, repost, and place on websites for non-commercial purposes, if shown only in its entirety with no changes or additions. This notice must accompany all repostings. So, consider this the notice. I've read it out now, and we've got the article in full. It was not cut in any which way, and we haven't added anything to it either. So we are well within our rights to share this with you, because we're not a commercial venture, unfortunately. I wish we were, but we're not. We're not getting any money. No one's getting any money for this. So let's share this really interesting theory by Bruce Fenton on the Göbekli Tepe complex and its links to Aboriginal Australian culture. So let's dive right into it. Scientists and independent researchers have publicly speculated on the purpose of the mysterious Göbekli Tepe megalith complex in southern Turkey. The question that the experts seem unable to address is the identity of the builders. That is correct. Having completed an in-depth investigation of human origins and early migrations, it is now appropriate to reveal this is the author's extraordinary findings. Göbekli Tepe is the product, he believes, of Aboriginal Australian culture. The identification of the builders will likely be considered very controversial, to say the least, as it should, because this represents a major paradigm shift. Göbekli Tepe is the largest well-dated megalithic complex of the pre-pottery period. Say that 3 times fast. There may be other megalithic sites of greater antiquity, but none matches the complexity, scale, and advanced knowledge revealed at this site. In 1994, Klaus Schmidt of the German Archaeological Institute began excavations at the Neolithic hillside in what is today southern Turkey, which is formerly Armenia. Beneath the hill was the most extraordinary archaeological site yet uncovered, remarkable for both its immense size and incredible antiquity. Göbekli Tepe is an arrangement of at least 200 T-shaped stone pillars, of up to 6 meters in height and 22 tons in weight. The pillars are covered with imagery. The recognized boundaries of the complex include over 22 acres of land. 22 acres. The physical aspects of the Göbekli Tepe archaeological site are quite amazing, but its dating astonished researchers. The pillars of Göbekli Tepe have stood for at least 12,000 years. 10,000 of those underneath a huge pile of soil deliberately placed over them. Let me say this again. This site was buried 10,000 years ago under a pile of soil that was deliberately placed over them. 10,000 years ago it was buried. We have no idea what happened 5,000 years ago, but this is 10,000 years. Göbekli Tepe is not some lone anomalous site existing outside a greater context. Archaeologists recognize around 40 archaeological sites sharing the cultural signature observed at Göbekli Tepe. These discoveries cover a vast area within the Mesopotamian region. Scientists have also identified a correlation between the distribution of ancient sites and the presence of wheat grasses. There has been significant debate on the purpose of the Göbekli Tepe constructions. Mainstream academics tend to suggest it was a ceremonial site. The plethora of stylized animals on the pillars, alongside many anthropomorphic beings, is certainly reminiscent of known shamanistic traditions. The strongest argument put forward by the academics is that a form of bird shamanism was observed by the local culture. Some members of the Göbekli Tepe research team have gone as far as to speculate that crane dances may have been performed there. Leading voices in the independent and alternative archaeological research community have offered their opinion on Göbekli Tepe. In his recent book, Göbekli Tepe, Genesis of the Gods, the Temple of the Watchers and the Discovery of Eden, Andrew Collins finds agreement with the proposed bird shamanism link. Collins connects biblical tales of the site, including the Garden of Eden and the mysterious Watchers. His work also suggests that a prehistoric Polish population, the Swiderian culture, might be the builders. In his best-selling book, Magicians of the Gods, The Forgotten Wisdom of Earth's Lost Civilization, Graham Hancock gives significant space to an analysis of Göbekli Tepe. Hancock details a possible astronomical interpretation of animal symbols on Pillar 43, suggesting these images represent recognizable constellations. Pillar 43 is regarded in his work as a snapshot of the sky at the time of a cometary impact event. Dr. Robert M. Schoch, an associate professor at the College of General Studies, Boston University, briefly discusses Göbekli Tepe in his book Forgotten Civilizations, the role of solar outbursts in our past and future. Dr. Schoch is well known for his attribution of the Egyptian Sphinx to a lost civilization that existed around 9,000 years ago. Göbekli Tepe offers support for Schoch's existing hypothesis that a megalithic culture existed during the pre-pottery period. He suspects that the deliberate burial of Göbekli Tepe followed the onset of cataclysmic solar storms. Dave?
Yes. These three heavyweights all agree the site was at least in some significant part an astronomical observatory, and that it offers compelling evidence for an advanced civilization that fell foul to a forgotten catastrophic event. They also see obvious links between the dating of Göbekli Tepe and the Younger Dryas climate events. Briefly, the Younger Dryas period is marked by sudden intense cooling about 12,800 years ago, followed by equally sudden and intense warming 11,500 years ago. Archaeological evidence suggests that at both ends of the Younger Dryas global cataclysms occurred that led to mass extinctions. Certainly, the megalithic builders responsible for Göbekli Tepe lived through the collapse of their civilization and decided to bury their work. It is evident their culture went into rapid retreat, and today it only remains in the region of origination, Australasia. The stones of Göbekli Tepe speak, but only if one knows their language. These mighty megaliths bear the signature of the Australian Aboriginal traditions from which they emerged. The fingerprints of this culture remain across much of northern Australia, but lest anyone raise the accusation of regional cherry-picking, the focus here will be almost entirely in one area, Arnhem Land. Arnhem Land is no arbitrary selection for investigation. Situated on the closest point to the Indonesian islands, Arnhem Land was once part of lands that extended much further out into the Timor Sea and the Arafura Sea. Migrants moving towards Southeast Asia would have passed through what is now Arnhem Land. Yingana is a female, humanoid personification of a rainbow serpent, one of the powerful entities of Aboriginal mythology. This is in the dreaming lore. The female rainbow serpent is responsible for seeding humanity across the landscape, while the male rainbow serpent is responsible for shaping much of the landscape itself. George Chalukpa, that's not even right, the foremost expert on the rock art of Arnhem Land, informs us that the belief in the rainbow snake, a personification of fertility, increase richness in propagation of plants and animals, and rain, is common throughout Australia. It is a creator of human beings, having life-giving powers that send conception spirits to all of the waterholes. It is responsible for regenerating rains, and also for storms and floods when it acts as an agent of punishment against those who transgress the law or upset it in any way. It swallows people in great floods and regurgitates their bones, which turn into stone, thus documenting such events. I'll take this last paragraph. Until very recent historical times, all traffic was one way, moving out of Australasia, not inwards. This fact has been well established in multiple genetic studies and indicates that any truly ancient culture elements are indigenous to Australia. There is also some evidence that the flooded lands of the Suhal and Sunda plates, which is Suhal is Australia, by the way, were once home to an advanced megalithic culture, eventually swallowed by the rising sea. Arnhem Land would have formed part of this lost culture's territory and is likely to retain elements from it. This region also boasts an extensive wealth of ancient rock art, some of which dates to 45,000 years before the present. Meki.
That's amazing. It's amazing. And we start with a comparison between the only female figure discovered at Göbekli Tepe and a rock painting depicting a well-known creator being from Arnhem Land, Yingana. The likeness between these two images is immediately striking. We recognize similar posture with the same positioning of the legs and breasts, cartoonish exaggeration of the female genitalia, and clearly inhuman heads. The belief in the rainbow snake, a personification of fertility, increase, and again, richness in the propagation of plants and animals, and rain is common throughout Australia. Okay, we've had this. Not wrong. That's bones. Yeah. Here we go. In the traditions of Arnhem Land peoples, Yingana is said to have arrived on the eastern shores of the continent, emerging from the ocean. Yingana carried many bags with her, each containing spirit children and yam seeds. We can see these bags in the second rock art painting. And we've got a picture here, which we might be able to post. Note her extremely narrow and serpentine body atop which sits the same strangely shaped head we saw in the previous painting. The only facial features are two huge eyes. Wherever Yingana traveled, she seeded human populations, giving to each group a bag containing their culture and language. Before moving onwards, Yingana would teach the newly founded communities how to farm yams. The rainbow serpent takes many forms, not only humanoid and serpentine, but also sometimes a bizarre chimera, incorporating elements of multiple animals and plants. In the above bark painting, we see Yingana with a feathered head, fishtail, in sprouting many strange mushroom-like appendages. These strange growths are Australian yam plants with distinctive heart-shaped leaves. Pictures. If we look again at the engraving of the female figure from Göbekli Tepe, we see it has one of Yingana's yam leaves on her head. Oh, sorry, as her head, rather. This parallel iconography across such a vast distance is nothing short of stunning. If we turn to Göbekli Tepe's iconic Pillar 43, we see this column includes depictions of both serpents and bags. 3 bags are given the most prominent position of all, right at the very top. The snakes depicted on the relief sport swollen heads, making them resemble mushrooms. This is a common element of snakes engraved around the compound. If we take a closer look at one of the serpents depicted at Göbekli Tepe, on a stone artifact, we see the exaggerated head. It is evident the artist tried to make it clear that these are not common snakes. The yam leaf-shaped heads remind us immediately of rainbow serpent iconography. If we take a glance at the painting of Yangana with her bags, we recognize the same bulbous head with prominent eyes. If we were to add 2 arms to the snake engraving and place a few bags around the neck, we would have a perfect replication of Yingana. The builders of Göbekli Tepe were living during a time of global catastrophe, a significant part of which involved flooding, animal extinctions, and assumedly forced relocations. With immense changes happening in their world, it may be that Göbekli Tepe represents their strenuous human effort to reverse the declining environmental situation. The images at Göbekli Tepe are mostly animals. It is tempting to think that these represented a significant effort by the shamans to call forth the spirits of the animals, many of which had become extinct. The second part of this project would have been an effort to placate spiritual beings associated with flooding, such as the rainbow serpent. Snake images are everywhere at Göbekli Tepe. Birds are another well-represented animal form. At the very bottom of Pillar 43, we see a large bird head attached to a very long neck. We do not see the body, but it looks rather like an emu. Dave?
It sure does. Large flightless birds appear elsewhere, not most notably on Pillar 56, where we see representations of multiple large-bodied birds with long necks. These bird images are almost identical to emus represented in rock art form from Arnhem Land. These large birds may, in fact, be Genyornis, an emu-like bird that went extinct around 30,000 years ago. Similarities are evident when we look at rock art depiction of Genyornis from a site in Australia's Northern Territory, Arnhem Land. The emu holds a very special place in Aboriginal astronomy, associated with the dark rift of the Milky Way. The second part of this project would have been an effort to placate spiritual beings associated with flooding, such as the rainbow serpent. Snake images are everywhere at Göbekli Tepe. Becky, that's a duplicate. Birds are another well-represented animal form at Göbekli Tepe. At the very bottom, yeah, so it's a... what is it? These bird images are almost identical to emu. That's the same thing. The emu holds... there we go. So, it is especially interesting to note that Pillar 56 includes an eagle grabbing a giant serpent in its talons with smaller serpents depicted beneath. In some of the many Aboriginal flood stories, it is the eagle that halts the progression of the rising seas. The flood is a punishment for human misbehaviour. And just as a note from me, that is similar across the planet. Back to the notes. And only after humans agree to correct their behaviour does the eagle step in and end the mounting cataclysm. The eagle is also a prominent role in Aboriginal astronomy, linked to both Altair and the Southern Cross. It is not only at Göbekli Tepe where we find this Aboriginal Australian symbolism. Contained in the greater body of research work is a far broader picture. After the cataclysms, new sprouts of civilization emerge from cultural seeds planted by a lost Aboriginal Australian global culture. As Aboriginal Australians the Australasians, have carried the hidden history of this first culture through comet impacts, solar storms, and deliberate genocide. Meki.
Today we owe them enormous debt. The sacred art of Aboriginal Australians provides the final few cultural connections between the builders of Göbekli Tepe and Aboriginal Australia. In these photographs, and you can't see them, we see an exact match between a symbol on an Aboriginal elder's chest and one on a pillar at Göbekli Tepe. I want to quickly describe this. So it's actually two U's facing each other. Like one is facing down, open, and one is facing up. So two horseshoes facing each other with a line in the middle. So that one is painted on the body of an Aboriginal elder, and the other is actually engraved in pillar 28 here. Yeah, that's it's the same. It's the same symbol, right? Which is really astounding. The meaning of this is often suggested to be of two people sitting to share knowledge. On a central pillar in enclosure D, we find a set of symbols normally reserved for the most sacred artifacts of the Australian Aboriginals, Churinga stones. A modern example of a Churinga stone is shown on page, I've got a picture here. I think, anyway. There's an example shown of this Churinga stone. The only difference from the symbol on the pillar is that the two lines do not merge with the central circle. Right? This is the Churinga stone. Churinga stones are regarded as receptacles for spiritual energy associated with creator beings, sky heroes that came down to earth. Incredibly, the full pillar on which this Churinga symbol appears is itself described as a stylized representation of a humanoid deity. We see the mysterious being's arms folded just above the belt. So, and this brings us to a conclusion of this particular text. I honestly don't know what to say to this, because it certainly throws a completely new light on the megalithic builders. But we shouldn't really be surprised, Dave, and I'll tell you why. So we know that the megalithic builders built between 15 and 20,000 years ago. We know there was a civilization at that point. That's our assumption here. We also know that the Aboriginal civilization goes back 40, 50, 60, maybe even 80,000 years, correct? Now, in all of that time, our assumption is that the Aborigines have always lived exactly as they have lived today. I don't know. It seems extremely unlikely to me that in 80,000 years, the Aboriginals would not at least once have gone out of Australia and maybe started an empire or some kind of global civilization. I mean, I don't want to sound cavalier, but I just don't understand why anybody would think that something would remain unchanged for 80,000 years. We know that in nature, nothing remains unchanged. We know that empires rise and fall. We know civilizations rise and fall. We know that species go extinct, other species appear. We know adaptation is a thing. So I don't understand why we have such a hard time assigning the Aborigines of Australia the same kind of drive, the same kind of need. In fact, the more I think about it, the more plausible in my mind it becomes. In fact, I think that's exactly what happened. Because think about this. Let's say you reach the pinnacle of your civilization. Let's just assume you do, right? And then a catastrophic event happens, and you had this high technology, you had all this stuff, but it didn't help you. None of it helped you. And so what do? Maybe you become more spiritual. Maybe you go back to basics. Maybe it was such a catastrophic event that it threw back the Aboriginal culture so much that there was no recovery from it. Maybe it was a psychological thing as well. Maybe the dream time that they speak of was this global civilization that existed, where again, if you look at some of the things we can do today, they seem like magic. It's like we're living in a dream. Foremost, we can fly. We're going into space. There's a major. We can watch things that happen very far away. We can talk to people in space, even if you really want to. And if you had this high level of civilization, this high level of technology, and then you are, well, reduced to, I guess, a Stone Age existence, yeah,
It would be so fanciful.
yeah, exactly, right, exactly. And if you look at it as well, and this is just me. This is me talking. Has got nothing to do with anyone, not even Dave. But like I said, I travel a lot. And two things I want to share with you. Right, one of my friends, an Indian person from Fiji, had once had his grandmother visit from Fiji, and she listened to some Aborigines talking. This must have been in Sydney. I don't know where, but this is the story he told me. I'm not making this up. And she said, "Oh, they're speaking our dialect, or they're speaking a language I understand." So this is an Indian lady listening to Aboriginals talking in whatever language they were talking in. And I don't know. I have no idea which dialect that was. All right, so that's one. Two, if you look at the genotypes or the racial features, I guess, or the ethnic features of Indians or Southern Indians, and compare it to some of the Aboriginal features, you see a great many similarities. Skin tone, head shapes as well, facial features, especially Southern India and Sri Lanka. Now, is this really that far-fetched? Well, not really, because you have to understand that, as we have outlined many times before, and we've just outlined again in this article, there were land bridges connecting Australia with Indonesia and then into Asia. Why is it so hard to believe that there was a I don't know, colonization is probably the wrong word, but certainly people movements between Australia and the subcontinent and the rest of the world? Is that really so hard to believe? Well, I don't think it is. But again, we have this narrow view of the world. The white man discovered the world. We discovered Australia, in the 18th century or the 17th century, whenever we did, and then the English came, which is also not true because it was the Dutch that were here first. Mm-hmm. So it is just this narrow cultural bias and bigotry that we have that doesn't allow us to think any further, and yet the evidence is staring at us from all over the place. We can see it. It's there, and it would make sense that we know that the Aborigines inhabited Australia for an uninterrupted period of tens of thousands of years. That's a fact. It's stand on your head. And therefore, it stands to reason that at the very least they interacted, one would think, with the megalithic builders, if they were not the megalithic builders themselves. Right?
Absolutely.
It's a lot to take in.
There is a lot to take in. Also, I'm going to mention when that slide comes up. I was able to insert the slide from that we were talking about awesome. With 2 years. One of the things, and when you said 2 years, I thought 2 sheep. What? No. And then you said horseshoes. That seemed to make sense to me. One of the things that the Aboriginals were actually quite good at art. Yeah. The art, not were, are. The art depicts a number of things. Like one is the internal organs, the bone structure, where other cultures just negated that entirely, right? Showing the outside. They also showed all the visitors. So everyone who's arrived and made contact with them, they drew. And one of those was those large, black-eyed, white, almost halo depictions of what look like, modern grey aliens, to be honest.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Now, maybe those grey aliens, maybe they're not aliens. Maybe they're visitors, and like we've spoken about, that maybe this Earth is inhabited by more than just humans, right? Maybe they came to say hello. Maybe they were part of that, the repopulation component that a lot of the other cultures had talked about post-flood. That seems to make sense to me. Those beings came back a couple of times to visit, right? All of that kind of thing. We've both, Meki and I have spoken to the Strongs, so it's Evan Strong, and his Out of Australia theory, which until the DNA testing from around the world, of all of the cultures, as old and far back as they could get, it seemed like it wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing more and more evidence that seems to make more and more sense. 80,000 years.
I want to see more
pre-flood, post-flood.
archaeology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to see more archaeology, serious archaeology in Australia. I want to see more money invested to look for ancient structures here. I know people say, yeah, we just didn't build cities that are. Well, we know that's nonsense for starters. Okay, we know there were many different cultural epochs. And within 80,000 years, really, they never got around to cities. Anyway, that's beside the point.
So, Meki, just like Göbekli Tepe, there may be intentionally buried monuments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But I want Mount Yangu to be investigated. If I had the money, maybe one day I will, at least ground penetrating radar, something. Give me something, right? Let's see what it is. And we don't even have to disturb the Earth. We can use ground penetrating radar. We can use the sonar. It's like a sonar as well. There's a whole bunch of stuff we can do without ever disturbing, without ever putting a shovel into the ground. We can do a lot. So why not focus on that? And another thing is, it's a hop, skip, and jump to the Antarctic from Australia. And I believe an ice-free Antarctic, all right, Antarctic continent, was potentially another place for a high civilization as well. Okay, and then maybe that's why we have all these strange reports of the Antarctic, all these strange happenings, these expeditions, and maybe even strange finds in the Antarctic. But clearly, we're talking about tens of thousands of years ago, a time frame which no serious scientist, and I say this in inverted commas, would ever agree to investigate, because it would be career suicide. It would be complete career suicide to entertain any of this for a serious archaeologist. Right? Immediately, they would be branded as fringe, because that just doesn't make any sense. And I remember very clearly from my school days the depiction of how civilization developed. It was a steady road up. It's like a steady move from the Stone Age up. We invented the fire wheel, then the stone tools and all that. Then we came to stone tools before the wheel. Then we built the pyramids, and then we had the Roman Empire, and then we had the British Empire, blah blah. And I'm simplifying this, of course, but that's pretty much the way. Go on.
There was no cataclysms in there.
Because it's steady state. The problem that we have is scientists are still married. They're chained to steady state. Now, steady state means that everything is just like it was today, and it just everything happens slowly and over long periods of time, and changes come along, but it's nice and even. And what we know for a fact though is that's bull. It's complete bull. It's balderdash. Why? Because we know catastrophes have happened. We have had six major extinction events. Okay, in the geological history of the planet, and we know that now. We know that civilization has existed that we have no idea that it existed. Like, who built Göbekli Tepe? Who built it? We have no idea. None. Zero. Right? I mean, we have some ideas, but not in the mainstream.
There's the image, by the way. If you're on YouTube later on, that's the image we're talking about.
Perfect. And other anachronisms, we like to call them, the mechanism of Antikythera. We are so lucky, Dave, and I said this before, but it's my favorite thing to say. We are so lucky that we found the one working prototype of this mechanism after 2,000 years at the bottom of the Mediterranean. This was a guy that was diving for sponges, by the way, just to let you know, right? He was a sponge diver who found it. Really? Man, we are lucky. And then we find the only temple that was buried 10,000 years ago, right? Göbekli Tepe, the only one. It was just dumb luck. Imagine all of the things we haven't found because we don't know where to look. Because it might have been ground discussed by a glacier. Because the Earth has folded in on itself, right? It was swallowed up by a trench. Who knows? My point is,
more presumably, it's beneath the water.
Yeah, absolutely. Beneath the sand, beneath the water, the Namib. I think it's a 20 million year old desert. The Namib is the oldest desert in the world, right? Why not go and look there? Look at the Namib. How old is it? Namib, yeah. It's really, really old, okay? It's a really old freaking desert. But no, we don't look in this place because it's too hard. It is just too hard. 55 million. Yeah. The Namib is 55 million years old. Yeah.
So some of those instantaneous cataclysms are like Death Valley in the US, which was carved out in a single event.
Right?
Over
So,
weeks, just weeks.
So something, yeah, exactly. And we know that the massive flooding or glacial events or something happened. And not just on Earth. Mars is the same thing. You look at on one side of the Mars, it was scarred by something which created a massive canyon. The largest volcano in the solar system is Mount Olympus on Mars. We can't just
Mons.
Yeah, that's right. Which is Olympic. Yeah. So it is just inconceivable to simply look at one thing and then just focus on that. You must look at everything. And I know this is drawing the ball very far, but you've been with us for 8 years, more or less. You know where we're coming from. You know how our thinking progresses. And if you followed us with the hypothesis, then you know where this is all going, because it is all connected. It is all one gigantic puzzle. We're trying to fit all the pieces together, right? We have lost tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of years of our history. Gone. We've lost it. I believe some of us still remember and don't tell us for various reasons. I believe the knowledge still exists. I believe the Akashic record is a real thing as well, but we have been denied access to it, right? Unless, through some flukes, especially Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet. There's a lot of history, and there's a lot of misinformation and miseducation that surrounds our belief and our history and our place in the universe. And none of the things that we take for granted or hold dear are helping us resolve these mysteries. Religion has been used to divide us for thousands of years. It's not a unifying force at all. It's a divisive force, one of the worst divisive forces ever. We have used, and again, this brings back the division of language. Language is the single biggest divisive force on the planet in the human experience, language. And I believe, together with Dave, that language was deliberately confused at some point.
Correct.
And I believe that the original language was, in fact, telepathy. Right? We were robbed of our ability to be telepaths. I'm not saying that we never spoke, but I believe true communication happened on a telepathic level. And I think that speech was maybe used for singing and for other maybe artistic ventures, maybe spoken poems, or who knows what. But then language came along, which confused everybody. And everybody had different languages, which was confusing as well, and which was the perfect divisive tool. Because if you can't speak someone else's language, how can you communicate? You cannot. But imagine how perfectly you could communicate if you were telepathic. Imagine that for a second, right? And again, there are many indications within Aboriginal Dreamtime stories that telepathy was in fact a thing back in the day, right? And again, Dave, it's bigger than we can possibly talk about in a few minutes.
You know what? I'm glad the spoken word is here. And for only one reason. Flower in the crannied wall, I pluck you from the crannies. I hold you here, root and all in my hand, little flower. But if I could understand what you are, root and all in all, I should know what God and man is.
Yeah,
Tennyson.
Nice. It's beautiful. Beautiful.
Imagine that it's just a single download. Bloop. Oh, yes, I get that. I understand. But to be written in that way, I think that's one of my favourite poems of all time. I could only imagine how that would feel as a download. Remember that telepathic isn't speaking at someone with your mind.
No, it's not. It's not. Exactly.
It's packed. It's like downloading on the internet, right? You get the entire package all at once with emotions, the feelings, all of the sensations, as well as the idea of it. So the human language has a lot to be desired when it comes to trying to explain that. But it's a thing, and I'm sure that we can all do it.
I agree, 100%. Perfect communication, because you would be talking in. If you were telepathic, again, like Dave said, you wouldn't be thinking words at someone. You would be conveying images, concepts, ideas, feelings. Lying would be virtually impossible in a civilization like that. Now, does this sound like the golden time of of old? Every civilization talks about a golden time.
But
where the lion would lie with the lamb, things like that. This imagery of no conflict. If you can, I'm not saying that it would be perfect. I mean, it probably as perfect as you could get. There'd be conflict for something. Surely people, be jealousies and things like that. But it'd be a lot harder for conflict to arise. A lot harder. Is the music started?
Yeah, that's okay.
Come back next week for the new show cycle of something.
I like that. And it'll be show number 393. That's what we're looking forward to. Also, join Jer Bear and a round table. He always has a great show. All right. Take care, everyone. See you next week.